Well, hello there, guys and gals out in interwebs land. It is time for another episode of Miyagi Mornings. I believe it's 94 today. I think that's right. I think I said 83 yesterday, but it was 93. Anyway, once again, I've gone to the well at MeWe. I've taken some questions and said, hey, what do you guys want to hear about? I put up 3 today, and the winner by a long shot in the poll, and I mean by a long shot, was monetizing your homestead life. So we're going to talk about that today. I am going to give you some ideas and some things you can do on your homestead, but I want to talk more about how to think about this because probably some of the best monetization ideas haven't really been thought of or used heavily yet. And you can always look at your homestead as what it is, which is unique. Your homestead's unique, you're unique, the community around you is unique, and the way that you can reach out to the larger community by selling online is also unique. So you need to be thinking about all this. But what I want to do with this in the beginning is let's start off thinking a little bit more like our ancestors. So we can think back to, and my ancestors really don't fit in this group, but as an American, this is my lineage as an American. My ancestors came over about the turn of the from the 1800s into the 1900s. But before that, we had this big Western settlements, right? And my grandparents did a lot of the type of thing I'm talking about on the homestead too. But I'm going back more to the land settling generation, the people that went, it was like a tenth of the population of the country in the cities that there is today, and they're like, this is too many people. I want to go somewhere else and have my own opportunity. And they went out and they got 40 acres. You think of Oklahoma, like the Sooner State, where you got there, you had to pick your 40 acres first or whatever, and they got this raw piece of land, and we kind of think of it as they went out, they got it, they plowed it, they planted corn, and they went on with their lives, and they became farmers, and that was really what they did. No. A man can't make a living on a cornfield today, and he couldn't do it back then either. Not alone, not as the only thing that you did. The farmer, even today, is a mechanic, he's an engineer, he's a troubleshooter, he's a vet tech. I mean, there's 100 sub-disciplines within that, and that's always been the case. You go all the way back, one of the things you can really watch and learn a lot about the mindset of people that have lived this way for hundreds of years is there's a documentary called Tales from the Green Valley that was done by the BBC. You can check that out. You probably find it here on YouTube if you're on YouTube, and someday maybe I should really strip that all down and get it over on Odyssey, because YouTube keeps deleting it and shit for some unknown reason. I don't know why. Anyway, when our forefathers got this piece of land, they realized the value of what they had. And a big reason that a lot of them realized it is they were immigrants at the time. And they had come from a place where it was still almost impossible for you would refer to at the time as a commoner to own land. You had to be a noble in a lot of the world to own land. You could lease it from a monastery. You could lease it from a nobleman. You could use what was called the commons. But you having your piece of land that you owned, that you could take everything from and use in any way you wanted and profit or fail with, that was new to these people. So they realized the value of what they had. I remember a story from a speaker. I don't remember who it was, but he was talking about a little girl getting on an airplane one time. He's sitting there in first class, and this little girl gets on the airplane, and she looks back in the airport, or the airplane, and then she looks, and you can see, because doors open, this is before 9/11, doors open in the cockpit, you see all those bells and whistles, and all these adults had got on the plane, just sit down, plane, put your stuff up in the overhead, and hopefully they'll bring you a drink, The little girl got on there and went, God, just amazed. And you realize, she's right. The fact that we're on this machine that is going to transport us thousands of miles in mere hours and all of the things that go into that but we don't see it anymore. And that's the difference between how our ancestors looked at a homestead, whether it was 4 acres or 40 acres or 400 acres versus what we do. They didn't just see it as a place to farm or to ranch. They saw it as an incredibly valuable asset. And they looked for side hustles. If you even think about really old TV shows before they ruined television, like Little House on the Prairie, for instance, I remember one particular episode where Charles Ingalls, he's got his little farmland and all, but he's making wagon wheels for somebody in his shop. And that's so we can make enough money for the things that they can't provide for themselves. This is the mindset we need to come at. So what are some things we can do to make money? I've talked about this a lot on Miyagi Mornings, but I really think seeds and plants are like printing money, right? And that was one of the other topics today, so I won't go too deep into it. But honest to God, like the fact that you can just take some plants that you're growing, especially perennials that root easily, root them, throw them in some pots, and then throw out an ad on Craigslist or, next door is a great place to do this because they're all people that are relatively close to you. Hey, I have this so-and-so kind of plant that I have, and this is really an important thing. I have 20 available, right? I have 20 available, right? Even if you have 50, maybe you say you have a little bit less than you do, because if people think they can just get it any time, I'll get that at some point. But like when they start seeing I'll take 3 from a neighbor, I better get some. So that sense of scarcity, like that's just a marketing tactic. But, I've sold, $100 easy with no real work in just like sweet potato slips before. That's an example. I have some ideas where I might be putting some packages of plants together that I might ship that are going to be like, an herbal tea garden in a 4-pack, like 4 different easily rootable perennial herbs that are going to make tea from. Like, how many of those do you need to sell to make enough money to pay for, like, let's say, all your fertilizer for a year? And then that's no longer an expense, even though if you're doing it commercially, it is an expense because, well, that's fence post money. You see what I'm saying? If you have any sort of skill set when it comes to building things, a lot of us in our homesteads have some kind of shop or something like that. Start building something that you can sell. If you happen to have built a really great homestead, reach out to things like the homeschool community and stuff like that. Maybe just tours. And maybe you don't have to charge a lot of money to, take 5 kids around your place and explain how everything works. Maybe it's $100. Let me tell you something about homeschool families. A lot of them are quite affluent. And if they're putting together a group and they have 4 or 5 different families, $100 is no big deal, right? And it's $100. And I guarantee they're going to pay you in cash. And more with homeschoolers, maybe they'll pay you in crypto, right? Like that's another idea. I'm not trying to talk about hitting home run grand slams here with full-time income. What I'm talking about is function stacking a whole bunch of little things into something profitable. Sure, it probably isn't kosher with the food police in your area, but there's no reason you can't be doing like on homestead meals for a price. And if you're smart about the way you do it, you're not going to get shut down. If you're out marketing this every day on Facebook or something, sure. But if you are, communicating locally, hey, we do like 4 of these a year, no one's going to bother you 99% of the time. And you have to be smart about how you do it and who you're doing it with. In some ways, I know this is going to sound bad, right? But it's true because there's so much interference in our lives. We need to start thinking like a 1980s, drug dealer. And I'm not talking about the bad drug dealers out shooting people. I'm talking about the guy that was growing a few pot plants in some closets, and he was selling some pot for pocket money. That's what I'm talking about. You know what the rule was? You don't get high in your own supply. No, that guy got high in his own supply. I did it with him, okay? I'll be honest. I'm sure the statute of limitations is up on that long ago. The rule was you only sold to people you know. You only sold to people you know. And you only sell small amounts. And that way, that guy, we all knew that guy. We all probably knew multiples of that guy. If you're my age and you're around in the 70s and 80s, right? That guy almost never, you don't know that guy going to jail, do you? Because he was smart about it, right? And that was a lot riskier than, hey, having some people over for a steak, right? So that's another way that you can do things. And if you have a farm that's actually producing animals, then maybe you can serve what you're producing. You can also be really clever about it. Let me tell you how I sold chickens for $50 a piece. Chickens, and I did no work as far as processing. I ran a processing workshop, and the way it worked was $100 to come, and you got to process 2 chickens. And I pasture raised my chickens, and then we taught students not using mechanized equipment like mechanized scalders and pluckers and things like that. We didn't even use killing cones. We used 5-gallon buckets, wood chips to catch the blood, some strings, slit the necks, put the bird in the bucket, and then we used just a pot. We just heated up over a propane thing, and we dunked our chickens, and we manually plucked them, and we gutted them, and we processed them, and everybody had a great time. Everybody had a great time. And really, I sold the chickens more like for $100 because here's how it worked. You process 2, and you get to take one home with you, and you leave one behind. So we ended up with about 25 students for that. The students all paid to do it. Half of them that had the right to take a chicken home didn't take a chicken home. They said, just keep it. I just wanted to learn. Some of them had come in for another workshop, so they'd flown in, so it wasn't very practical. So we took the chickens that they gave back to us. So we actually even made more money per chicken, honestly. And then we let them go through the rigor process and all. And the next day at a different workshop, when most of those students were still here, because it was like an add-on, we cooked the chicken that they processed on farm for everybody. So that covered the cost of that meal for all the students, more than the cost of that. And then we still put about 25 chickens in our deep freezer that somebody else processed for us and paid us for the privilege of doing it. Now, can you do that, once a week all year long? I doubt it. But see, that's boom. That's a drop and it's done. And back to the government interfering with things. The government tends to be reactionary. So Karen calls the cops, right? Karen calls the cops. So cop calling Karen calls the cops and says, this thing's going on over here. So then the cops come, maybe, depending on where you live. If you live where I live, the sheriff's department's like, we don't have time for your bullshit, Karen. I mean, literally, that is the response they'll get for something like that. But let's say they do show up. They're going to show up a day or two after this is done. What are you talking about? There's nothing going on here. Well, you can't do that anymore. Do what? Have people over to my house to have a meal? Really? I can't do that? Well, yeah. Okay, sure. And then think about how you handle your next thing. We have to start thinking this way. I'm tired of people saying, well, they won't let me. Quit being a damn pussy. Start figuring out how you can. If you have a homestead of any significant size, acre, 2, 3, 4, you have a tremendous opportunity. You can sit around worrying about what they won't let you do, or you can figure out how to do what you want. And you should be able to, my opinion is, you should be able to basically make your homestead pay for the inputs. That's all I'm looking for out of this. Now, if you want to end up making a lot more income or whatever, you have to start being a little more strategic, because you do have the department of making you sad that shows up and causes you problems. But, I mean, God, sometimes I wonder, how do we sit around with so much admiration for our founders, who, when the British taxed them for a small portion of tea they were told they had to buy, threw it in the damn water, started tarring and feathering tax collectors, and fought a revolution for independence over very minuscule taxes on their labor and their spending. And now we have people like, well, I have a homestead, but I can't do any of these things because the government might, keyword might, do something about it. You know who that person is? If you're that person, let me tell you who you really are. You're a person that was never going to do it anyway. You're a person that's never going to do it anyway. We don't sit around waiting for permission to do shit. And if you got permission, you probably wouldn't. If the government, whoever they are to you, wrote you a letter and said, we have approved your request to do this thing, whatever it is, go ahead. Most of you'd find another reason not to. It's a toolbox fallacy, repackaged. Some excuse not to. If you own land, it can make you money. And whatever you're doing to it for yourself, you should be able to figure out how to pay for that cost of input. That's step one. If you can do that, you're far and away ahead. Next step, you decide where you want to take your next level of income from. But that's why I want you guys thinking about this. I've done everything from selling goldfish for $50. I'm talking like a 16-cent feeder goldfish, 2 years in one of my ponds, big and beautiful, call it an Asian heirloom carp and put it on Craigslist, to selling sweet potato slips, to selling chickens and eggs and ducks and, everything in between. We've run chickens, we've hatched chickens, we've grown chickens to 12 weeks of age. And, so basically they'll start laying within the next 8 weeks, and sold them as well-started pullets. And we made more money selling them than you can make selling a chicken for meat. Right? We only kept them on the grass for another extra 3 weeks. And every week they didn't sell, we raised the price to cover the cost of the next week. We've made hundreds of dollars that way. We've raised turkeys. The way we did turkeys, we got really big broad-breasted bronze turkeys, And we said, if you want to buy a turkey, you have to reserve your turkey in the spring. We'll have them ready about Thanksgiving time when everybody wants them. Come pick up your turkey alive, take your turkey and get it processed, weigh it, and pay us on the dressed weight per pound. We sold every single one we had. Everybody paid in cash. We did no work. The only thing I did was take my own turkeys in to have them processed because I don't want to process turkeys. It's too much work. And we were growing turkeys that were dressing out at like 30 and 40 pounds. There's always a way if you adapt to the situation. And there's always a way like value add. Well, how much value do you want to add? Because value add means your labor. Can you get your customer to do some of the work for you? Can you minimize your interaction with your customer? It's not like I don't want to talk to my customers, but I have a life. I have things I have to do. Having somebody come with a box, throw 2 turkeys in it and leave, and then send me the money after the fact, and how many people rip me off? None. Do business with people you trust. Do business with people you know. Anyway, with that, it's been another episode of Miyagi Mornings. We'll be back with something different tomorrow.